believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Renz, also known as Ricky Rans, and finally, I'm back. I know it's been a little bit of a hiatus, and I'm super excited to be back and start pumping out these episodes again during this very crazy time of year with all the holidays and Christmas and New Year's, and there's so much going on. And obviously all our personal stuff with our families and friends and work and all that stuff. But as many of you longtime listeners probably know, in the winter, my full-time job slows down a bit so I can pump out more episodes. So I am looking forward to giving you more episodes more often. And thanks everyone who's always patient when life gets a little bit crazy. As you guys know, this isn't my full-time job. And my full-time job can get a little crazy. Sometimes it's during the summer. Sometimes it's the end of the year when we're trying to finish things up. So when my full-time gig does get a little busier, the podcast kind of drops a little bit on the priority list. And I always feel bad because I feel like when I'm not putting out episodes, you guys don't know what I'm up to, what I'm thinking, the things that I'm researching, or documentaries or other podcasts that I'm listening to. So please go in the show description, go on my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com, connect with me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I have a personal Facebook page and a Ripple Effect Podcast Facebook page, and connect with me. That way you can keep up with what is keeping me busy when I'm not releasing episodes and talking to you guys on a weekly basis. And that way you'll also keep up with interviews that I've done. For example, recently I was on the Sean Atwood podcast. He actually hosted a roundtable discussion about the Bidens, and he invited myself, Ryan from The Last American Vagabond, and Monica Perez. So it was a fun discussion. If you follow me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, you would have seen that post about my appearance. So check out the website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. Check out all the social media platforms I'm on. And if you're also on those, please give me a follow. And today we have a great guest. His name is Antony Sammeroff, and he was introduced to me by Dr. Jack, also known as Dr. James Lyons Wheeler, who has given me tons of great suggestions throughout the years in regards to great guests for the show. And Antony is an author, economic journalist. He's a therapist, coach, runs the website 7pharmamyths.com, and the creator and host of Be Yourself and Love It podcast. But before we get into this amazing conversation with Antony, let me remind you guys, this is a Value for Value show. If you get some value out of these discussions, please consider giving some value back. Like I always remind you guys, it doesn't have to be financial. You can rate the show, review the show, tell people about the show, any of the social media platforms you're on, share the show on those platforms, subscribe to us on all the audio and video platforms we're on, review, thumbs up, all that stuff. That helps, and we need that help when the algorithms are suppressing shows and conversations like these. But if you can financially support the show, there's tons of ways of doing it. One of the ways you can support the show, which I tend to forget at times, is listening to, downloading, streaming the intro music. You can find my old EP called The Ripple Effect by the artist Theory 6, which is my solo music project. And on that album, you can find the song called The Ripple Effect, which is the theme song to this podcast and what inspired the name to the podcast. So if you like the music that you hear in the intro and outro, please check out Theory 6, the album, The Ripple Effect. And just listening or downloading it on Spotify, Pandora, or wherever you listen to your music will help support the show. Other ways of supporting the show is sending a one-time donation via PayPal, Venmo, also sending crypto to our crypto wallet. You can send Ethereum or Bitcoin. We have a Patreon page, which is one of the best ways to support the show because it's guaranteed finances coming in monthly. And even if you just donate as little as $1 a month, if a small percentage of people donated that little, I could easily do the show full time. So no amount is too little. I donate to shows all the time that I listen to on a regular basis. I donate to ICANN. I donate to James Corbett. I've been doing donations to James Corbett for forever and ever and ever. But I felt guilty not donating something because it was one of the shows that I listened to on a regular basis for so many years. And I'm like, I have to give something, whatever I can afford. So for many years now, I've been donating to Corbett Report, and for some years now, ICANN. So that's just some examples. And really, if this is one of your go-to shows, please give a little bit if you can. And also another benefit of joining my Patreon page is from time to time, I do a podcast with my Patreon supporters. I used to do it much more often when I had a lot more time, but now with just life being so crazy, I find it very difficult to kind of squeeze those in. But I am planning on squeezing one in very soon now that my time and schedule has become a little bit more flexible. So please join the Patreon page and be a part of the next Patreon podcast. It's a great roundtable discussion with myself and other listeners, my Patreon supporters who listen to the show. We talk about everything and anything, and then I release it as a full episode. So it's a great way of getting your thoughts, your ideas on this podcast and to the listeners of the show. Another great way of supporting the show is checking out our merch store. We have mugs, we have stickers, we have t-shirts, hoodies for kids, for women, for adults, a little bit of everything, tank tops. So please check out the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com, or you can find the links in the show description or my website. But check out the merch store. Everything's really reasonably priced. You get it quickly. It's always good quality. As you can tell on the podcast, I'm always wearing Ripple Effect Podcast gear. I wear it to the gym. I wear it out, and the stuff lasts a long time, and it's high quality stuff. So please support the show by getting some merch, rep the show by getting some merch, and it's another great way of getting something for yourself and supporting the Ripple Effect Podcast at the same time. And then, of course, I have some sponsors. The first one being probably one of the most important ones, which is Content Safe. Content Safe is kind of the all-in-one IT company. Anytime I have IT issues, I hit up Content Safe, and they always help me out or send me in the right direction. But they also sync all my video channels together. So if you're a YouTuber, streamer, podcaster, any type of content creator, hit up Matt from Content Safe. Let him know you're a listener to Ripple Effect Podcast, and he'll hook you up, and he'll save you tons of uploading time, because I can upload to one channel, and then magically that video appears on my Rockfin channel, Rumble, Minds, Band.video, and all the other platforms I'm on. So I only have to upload to one location. It's a great time saver. And like I said, he also takes care of a lot of my other IT issues, runs my website. So if you contact Content Safe, make sure you let him know you're a listener of the Ripple Effect Podcast so you get the best service. My other sponsor is the University of Reason and the very popular autonomy courses. It's an amazing course that a lot of people have gotten tons of benefit from. There's tons of alumni that will speak very highly of this course. Matt from Content Safe being one of them. And this course was created by my good friend, Richard Grove, who's also the host of the Grand Theft World podcast. He is the creator and host of the Peace Revolution podcast. He's done amazing documentaries like State of Mind, The Psychology of Control, and I can't recommend that documentary enough. Richard Grove is truly one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, and his University of Reason can help people who are at a crossroads in life, help people who want to break out of the cycle that they're stuck in, or maybe you just want to learn some new skills, expand on some skills, maybe just connect with a freedom-minded community, a liberty-minded community. If this sounds like something that you might be interested in, please use the links on my website or in the show description. Sign up, and you can help yourself and the Ripple Effect Podcast at the same time. And then the last sponsor is Element Electrolytes, one of my favorite sponsors because it's the only one that I use just about every day and sometimes multiple times a day. You put it in your water, it adds flavor, and it also gives you the electrolytes necessary to optimize your body and mind and your life. The truth is, just drinking water doesn't hydrate you. It gets it in your blood, but you need it in your tissues to really be hydrated. And the way you do that is with electrolytes. There are many symptoms that are due to dehydration, and a lot of our hydration options suck. Most of them are full of artificial colors, artificial flavors. They don't have enough of the ingredients you need, like sodium, which is an essential mineral to optimize your body and help with a lot of symptoms like headache, muscle fatigue, muscle soreness, and many other symptoms that are due to dehydration. There's a great book that I think I've talked about on the podcast before called You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty. It's a great book about the importance of water and hydration. And on the Element website, if you use the link in the show description, it'll take you right to the Element website where you can purchase the stuff, but also learn a lot about hydration. Learn why there's certain dosages that he uses, and I say he because the creator and founder of Element Electrolytes is a past guest on my show, a past guest on many shows that talk about health and nutrition, like Joe Rogan. He's been on Rogan's a bunch throughout the years. His name's Rob Wolf. He's an OG in the diet and paleo nutrition community, and he knew exactly what he was doing when he was putting these specific dosages in his product. Some of you guys might have seen the Element commercial or promotion with NBA professional basketball player Bradley Beal, who talks about when he was younger, his mom would make him take a handful of salt before his practices and games, and he was one of the few guys who would never cramp and never get muscle fatigue. And now it makes sense to him that the sodium he was consuming, those extra electrolytes, were helping him stay hydrated more than the others, because sodium is a neglected and sometimes forgotten and also demonized essential mineral, and one of the most important ones if you're an athlete or you're a gym rat or you work outside and you're trying to stay hydrated. So please use the link in the show description or on my website to purchase Element Electrolytes, and you can support the Ripple Effect podcast and stay hydrated. And they also offer mocha and chocolate and other great flavors that go with warm drinks. If you want to stay hydrated while having a coffee, definitely check out some of those flavors. But please always use the link in the show description or on my website, so that way you can support the Ripple Effect podcast and get a free gift with every purchase when you use that link. Thanks, guys. Enjoy this amazing conversation, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.
Sammeroff in a lifelong journey of self-help and personal development. I am a psychotherapist. I work online speaking mostly to people in the Liberty community because that's how I got known. BeYourselfAndLoveIt.com if that's something that you might be interested in. And I host the Be Yourself and Love It podcast, which is just being revived after a long hiatus. I think probably I got into this stuff because when I was growing up, I had my own health issues, and it became very clear to me, being of a open mind or a critical mind, that the mainstream doctors didn't have any answers for me, particularly when I had skin conditions and they gave me some creams. It would just come back after I asked the doctor why, and he said, shrugged his shoulders, went, I don't know, poor luck, and then looked up and went, poor care. And I just thought for a minute, are you blaming me? Like I wish that I could rewind to that moment and go, excuse me, doctor, what exactly do you mean by poor care? How did I take poor care? What should I do better next time? Um, and like once he was going to put me in antidepressants, and I said, well, I mean, let me just do some research online first. And he went, okay then, doctor. And I was like, wow, that was a real shock to me at the time, because I thought he'd be pleased that I was taking an active interest in my health. But no, it seemed like he was part of the cult of authority and was undermined by that. Now I know that the depression, as well as a lot of things, were um, all my symptoms were due to digestion. And I went to a naturopath down in the Isle of Wight in the bottom of England, and he looked at all my symptoms, and that's what he said. He said that will all be your digestion. And he sent me away with some digestive enzymes and some probiotics and things like that. And lo and behold, I stopped coughing up mucus. And it was like, okay, now I see the difference between holistic healthcare and mainstream medicine. And that was quite, like, now looking back on that, I see that the treatments that he gave me were quite cosmetic as well, but they blew the door open. And around that time, a big book was called The Medical Mafia, and I read that, and I guess that put me on the journey. It's amazing when you have a calling in life, how strands can be picked up and then you can forget all about it for years. And then another strand gets picked up and they fit together. And you think, oh, that's really interesting. And then it can go away for years and then it comes back again. So many years later, I became a libertarian activist and I wrote books on economics. I wrote articles on the economics of like basically of a free society and how it would work. And I did write quite a bit of healthcare. I didn't publish most of it. And then that was kind of like a project I picked up and put down and picked up and put down. I never really quite knew where to put my full attention. And I just finished a project during the pandemic of bullshit, which we all suffered through. And all of a sudden, it became completely obvious what I was to do. That was to write this book on. By the way, there you can download a free ebook from 7pharmamyths.com. That's the number 7, P harm A myths, like Greek or Roman mythology. And I would encourage everyone to get my free ebook. Um, you can also leave a contribution if you want to. The site's set up like that. Um, it was like it was so obvious because there's so many different ways to look at the problems in healthcare, and you've covered a lot of them in your show. For example, the fact that public health was responsible for the disappearance of all these diseases, which are credited to vaccines and pharmaceuticals. It's quite interesting because mostly what I do is use mainstream sources to debunk widely held narratives. So I've got the Centers for Disease, the CDC told us in 1999 that while the average lifespan of persons in the United States has lengthened by greater than 30 years since 1900, 25 years of this gain are attributable to advances in public health rather than medicine. Pediatrics, 2000, 90% decline in all of infectious disease and mortality was down to improvements in sanitary conditions and nutrition rather than medical treatments. So you've got mainstream associations admitting this. At the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, most people lived in the cities in miserable conditions, small, dark, dank flats, mold, polluted air, no no clean water, poverty, scarcity, cold, poor hygiene, the stress for survival, right? And the living conditions improved. There were horse-drawn carts going down the streets, pooping everywhere. So this is what was causing all the disease. When they cleaned up, those diseases went away. And yet most people will say, well, we're living longer today. Most people think that tuberculosis was cured by streptomycin, but actually that was already way on the way out by 1945, and the medication was came out in 1946. This is means admitted by mainstream sources and yet not widely believed. So um I got lost a little bit. So it became my thing to use mainstream sources to debunk mainstream narratives. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of the shows I go on are conspiracy theory shows, and I'm sure some of the conspiracies are true. I'm very, very sure of that. But the funny thing is, what I'm reporting is not conspiracy theory. It's just simply I'm just repeating what the mainstream sources say if you look closely enough. So I thought I was uniquely positioned to talk about the history. I've got a lot of stuff about bad science and medicine and why the science is bad. Then the economics from my background in libertarianism, and then bringing the idea of holistic health from my own health journey with you know, digestive issues. I've fasted. I've done supervised fasts of 3 weeks on only water. I've gone on other detox protocols, juicing. I spent over 6 months of my life on yoga retreats and stuff like that. So it's kind of like I just felt when I came to a certain point, I knew this was the work that I was supposed to be doing right now, and I've just been riding that train. So That's the making of the Antony Sammeroff you see in front of you now.
Well, you're talking about how a medicine was introduced when the disease was already decaying and diminishing from the public. That's a similar story with a lot of the vaccine myths, polio
Right.
and all these things.
Yeah,
It's like cases were
correct.
already going down, and then they introduced the vaccine. And it's not hard to believe because similar things happened with the COVID vaccine, where with the COVID vaccine, nobody knew anybody who was dying from it. Nobody healthy, right? I mean, somebody unhealthy or really old, they can die of anything, anytime. But it wasn't like your neighbor, your healthy neighbor, your cousins, and yet the vaccine got all the credit for ending the pandemic. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, that's exactly what happened with the polio vaccine.
Hmm.
That's what happened to all the vaccines previously. And something you talked about, gut health, it's so important. I think now you're starting to see much more conversation and popularity in regards to just taking care of it. It's like your second mind. A lot of people, like you said, believe that it has huge effects on your emotions, your feelings, how you deal with things, your mood, and I see it. I mean, anytime I neglect my gut health, I don't feel as good. And it is something that I think just in general, the general public has neglected for a long time. Now you're starting to see people being active in regards to like taking enzymes, probiotics, prebiotics. You look at all the people that are on antibiotics, right? Like their doctor will be real quick to give them antibiotics, but they never recommend afterwards like rebuilding.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
very terrible.
yeah, I mean
And with the Yeah, with the polio thing, don't take our word for it. Here's the American Academy of Pediatrics, 2000. Vaccination does not account for the impressive declines in mortality. There's one quote. Here's another one. Nearly 90% of the decline in infectious disease mortality among US children occurred before 1940. What's 1940? That's long before most antibiotics and vaccines were invented. So I'm not saying it. The American Academy of Pediatrics is saying it. Are you going to tell me that they're a bunch of crazy anti-vaxxers?
Well, it's similar to like when I would tell people side effects of vaccines, and they're like, "Oh, vaccines don't do that." I'm like, "How about I Google vaccine inserts and show you what the makers tell you it can do?" And it can cause that. It can cause this. It can cause that. And like people just believe like it doesn't. I'm like, if it was so rare and if it didn't have any ability of causing these things, why would they put the warning on the label? Obviously that with
That's so that they can't get sued
exactly.
when it does goes out.
But
Yeah.
but but yet it's almost like the people who are pro-vaccine have more faith in the product than the people who create the vaccine themselves. And again, it's become like like a lot of people in the alternative media community have been saying, it's like it's become a religion, a cult of its own. Like this faith in vaccines, even if the people who are making them have fine after fine and fine of lying about their products.
And that's only the ones, it's very, very difficult to fine them or to prosecute them because the the way that the way that these charges are handled. But here's what I say. There's something like 800,000 completely unvaccinated people in the USA. So if they really want to prove that we're just nuts and there's no significant risks to vaccines, what they can do is do a long-term, sorry, do an assessment of the long-term health outcomes of vaccinated and unvaccinated populations. Out of that 800,000, take 10, 20, 30,000 people and see how much colitis do they have? How much Crohn's disease? How much diabetes? How much of all of the chronic illnesses that people are likely to suffer from today do the vaccinated group have? And how much do the unvaccinated group have? That is a study that many people have told the CDC to do every now and then. The Congress even have ordered them to do that study. When they brought in immunity for vaccine manufacturers, they were meant to produce a report on the safety of the vaccine schedule every 2 years, and they've never produced that report. So we're told that we're anti-science, but what I say is to the CDC, put your money where your mouth is. Do the science. Take age adjust the long-term health outcomes of vaccinated and unvaccinated populations, and tell us what the results are, and bring peace to our minds. Show us that they're as safe as you say that they are.
Well, and similar studies have been done because I don't know if you're aware, but our mutual friend Dr. Jack was a part of that study with Dr. Paul Thomas,
Mhm.
and Dr. Paul Thomas was one of the biggest pediatrician YouTube channel. I think the biggest pediatrician YouTube channel on YouTube, and he had a huge practice. And he was very open to people vaccinating, non-vaccinating, partially vaccinating, delaying. So it was the perfect place to kind of look at everybody, and they did that, and then they end up pulling his license. He
I
ended up
know.
getting harassed and all this stuff. And why? Because the outcome of this study showed that the more vaccines you had, the more health issues you had, and it was undeniable.
Yeah, and if you go online, no one has people, the skeptics, the usual skeptics, the people who are skeptical about everything except for mainstream narratives, have articles saying it's a poor study, it's a ridiculous study, but no one actually says why. That's just so someone who wants to can go online and Google it and go, oh look, this person says it's a badly designed study, therefore it is. Why you well, repeat the study then, take a bigger sample set, demonstrate that it's wrong. I've done Dr. Paul Thomas show with the Wind. He's a fantastic guy, and I'm actually going to be teaching. I guess we'll come to this at the end. A course on the economics of healthcare reform for Dr. Jack's online university IPAC of the um, applied and pure science organization that he's got, ipak-edu.org. He put me in touch with you to do this show, actually. So I'm a great admirer of his, and I always think it's funny how we are told that we're anti-science, but when it actually comes to anyone trying to do any science, as soon as it doesn't agree with what they want, the conclusions don't agree with what they've already agreed they want to hear, they people get blackballed. He had his license removed the next day after that study came out. Of course, they didn't say it's because he produced this study. They found an excuse, and this creates a cooling effect where other people who might want to do this sort of work don't even dare touch it.
Yeah, and I also have had on uh it was actually Dr. Brian Hooker who had a book that was just released recently uh called, let me pull it up. But yeah, so it's called Vax Unvaxxed, uh Let the Science Speak. And this is a great book. He actually did it with
Mm,
Robert Kennedy Jr. And Dr. Brian Hooker has also been on the show a few times. He was a part of the Vax documentary, and he was also, and the reason why he was in the documentary was because he was a part of the CDC whistleblower story, where he ended up getting a CDC head author of a study admitting that they showed that the MMR vaccine within 12 months of life did increase your chances of getting autism or autistic
wow.
symptoms. And then also here's another one, Dr. Alan Palmer, who wrote the book Truth Will Prevail, 1200 studies that show that the vaccine science is wrong, and debunking it. And that's the thing, like I think we were saying that before we started recording. A lot of the science, people just put their faith into it. Nobody
Right.
goes and researches it or looks into it. James Corbett, another dear friend of mine who's been on the show a bunch of times throughout the years, he had a great documentary that he put together. It was actually before COVID, but it highlighted an issue that was only expanded after COVID. What he had a documentary called The Crisis of Science, and it showed like everything from
Mm,
health to medicine and all these things, and how you could get something peer reviewed that's completely based on nonsense and, is really bad work, really bad studies, and how all of it is easily manipulated. And that's the problem with the science field, is that you
Yeah.
do get these people who are considered experts. They do a study, nobody goes back and looks at it. When I had Dr. Robert Malone on the show, who is one of the patenters of the mRNA technology, I remember him talking about, like, all the infighting, all the backstabbing, because everybody wanted to be a part of this patent, because science was all about, like, ego, and it was about getting my name on this patent because now it's going to help my career. And
Sure.
that's what really happens in the inside. But from the outside, we think these are all the most moral of people who only care about public health.
Yeah, totally. If you download my book from 7pharmamyths.com, I've got a whole section on bad science in medicine, and that is being extremely expanded for the new book that'll be coming out shortly. I'll let you know about that when you once you've downloaded the book. So we can talk about how bad the science in medicine is. I mean, one of the worst things I heard was um in in trials for antipsychotics. This is from the book Anatomy of an Epidemic by Robert Whitaker. They took a group of people that were already performing well on the drug, took them off of the drug, then randomized half of them into a control group while they were still withdrawing from the drug, and claimed that this was a placebo group. And then they said they performed worse than the group that they put back on the drug. So this stuff gets through peer reviewers. When you look at even a lot of the literature, the official literature for drugs, even when they approve it, they don't say that it's that effective. I mean, let's look at even if you just like, if drugs are so effective, why is diabetes skyrocketing? Why have they failed to cure a single one of the chronic diseases um, that we are likely to experience in our lifetimes? Alzheimer's disease, autism is at unprecedented levels. More people are obese than ever. Everyone expects to get arthritis when they're old. The rates of you're more likely to get cancer now than you were in the 1970s. The rates of multiple sclerosis, lupus, asthma, migraines, they've all hit the ceiling. More people are stressed and anxious. More people have ADD, ADHD, insomnia, bad skin, acne, dandruff, right? So what we've done is we've created a culture where they're making so much money off treating long-term chronic illnesses that curing any of them would be like to slay the goose that lays golden eggs. And because everyone's making money from the sale of drugs, for example, with Vioxx, the New England Journal of Medicine made hundreds and thousands, if not millions of dollars, selling reprints of an article to the manufacturer, which they then mailed out to doctors to propagandize them into thinking Vioxx was safer than alternatives, when actually it was more dangerous than alternatives. When they were asked to pull the article on the radio, someone said, "Oh, we can't be in the business of policing every claim we make." Right? So the journals are making money from selling articles that are favorable to the pharmaceutical industry. And that's why there's so much bad science in medicine. Um, you've got leading authorities, editors at the New England Journal of Medicine and the Lancet resigned in disgust, claiming that at least 70% of the articles in their journal were trash and biased towards corporate healthcare industry bodies. Richard Horston of the Lancet wrote, "Journals have developed into information laundering operations for the pharmaceutical industry." Um, Richard Smith, who was the editor of the British Medical Journal for 25 years, said, "Major medical journals are just an extension of the marketing departments of major drug companies." So I've got a whole list of quotes like this. Marcia Engel, editor of the New England Journal of Medicine: "It's simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that's published." And the thing is, even though we've got leading lights saying this, the money comes in for the pharmaceutical industry. It comes in from the government through Medicare and Medicaid, or through the government in countries that have socialized medicine like the UK. And this money, which is taken from the taxpayer, props up this system that has dreadful results, as we've seen, from my list of conditions that have got more prevalent rather than less. And authorities say you can't trust the science, but it just keeps on going on and on and on, because all of the money, everyone's getting paid. I've got a girlfriend in Mexico City, where I'm visiting at the moment, and she's a doctor, and she says, I never go to conferences that aren't paid by pharma. I mean, why would I? Now, doctors have to go to these conferences because it's continuing medical education. But, you know, you go through this system, it takes 10 years to get your license. You might have been doing 70-hour weeks or more on residency. You're knackered. You didn't get paid very much. You've worked so hard. Why wouldn't you go away for the weekend with a family to stay in a nice hotel while Pfizer fund a conference? Why would you go into your pocket to get objective data from, someone out there that's providing a very hard to get any funding for producing objective data, but it's not their money. It's the money is built into the cost of the medications. So not only when you go and you fill out your prescription and you pay for medication, or your private insurer does, or your government does, if you're in socialized medicine, they're not just paying for the medication, they're paying to indoctrinate doctors to believe that that aren't very effective are more effective and have fewer side effects than they do. So that's to add insult to injury. When people go out and get their medications, they're funding the entire corruption of the entire system. It's really, really shocking. It's like, you know, this raise more hogs to buy more land, to raise more hogs to buy more land, to raise more hogs to buy more land. But it's sell more poison to poison more people, so that those poisoned peoples want more poison to treat their poison conditions. And the sad thing is, America spends $4 trillion on healthcare. If they had a healthcare system similar to Singapore's, that might only be 1 trillion a year. Can you imagine how rich everyone would be if 3 trillion less was spent on healthcare, and that was spent on whatever people want, on making people healthier, on providing them with high quality food and education on how to take care of their body? It would be cheaper to bribe for the government to bribe everyone and pay them to go to yoga classes and, you know, eat organic food instead of stuff that's sprayed. That would cost less than treating the diseases that they're getting from being malnourished and taking poisonous medications.
Yeah, and like we talked about before we started recording, the discussion shouldn't be how do we make affordable healthcare happen. It should be how do we help people not have to need all this healthcare. People shouldn't. It's I forget which comedian said it. I wish I could give him credit because it's a clever and actually a relevant line. It's like back in the day, the doctor, maybe it was Bill Maher who said it. Back in the day, they used to ask you if you're on any prescription drugs. Today, they ask you how many prescription drugs you're on. And it's just like the culture has changed, where like before, you might know somebody who's on a pill, for some chronic illness or whatever. And now it's like everybody's on multiple pills, and all those pills, like we talked about before, have warning labels and side effects and all these things, which can cause other issues. So it becomes this cycle, like you mentioned, like you need some more poison to deal with the symptoms that's coming from the poison that you're taking. And this is a vicious cycle. And it's from a business practice point of view, it's great. Like this is exactly what you want, because you can always justify more pills. And even like the off-label use is kind of silly, like this idea that we've kind of accepted the fact that like it got FDA approved for this purpose, this person. So pretend it's, a pill that's, FDA approved for older people, because
Right.
it's a condition that older people have, but now you can off-label use it for something else for maybe younger people, and it's like, so it doesn't have to go through the process again because it's already FDA approved, but you're not using it in the correct manner. So it's like, and then everybody who is trying to promote, using dietary methods of feeling better, getting better, dealing with sicknesses, illnesses, looking at natural remedies, gets called a quack. And back in
Yeah, it's
the day, that
crazy.
was, yeah, it's crazy because it
They're
did.
the quacks.
What's that?
The mainstream doctors are the quacks. They prescribe treatments that is not supported by data all of the time. They think about it. Angelina Jolie preventatively got her breasts taken off. I mean, like for for they now rarely do that. Now, well, I mean, they do it sometimes, but a lot of the time they try and avoid a radical mastectomy. They'll just maybe take out the lump. But there's so many treatments that used to be widely prescribed that were later shown more harm than good. They reduced the number of PSA tests because people were getting false positives for prostate cancer and being made impotent or incontinent. And yeah, they reduced the recommendations on how often women could get mammograms because people were getting butchered. They were getting their chests butchered unnecessarily. But no one calls them quacks. Whenever this stuff happens, whenever a pharma company gets taken to court and sued, they just go, oh, well, it's the kind of mistake that tends to happen from time to time. But that doesn't mean that medicine is crackery. No, you've got a system that's bound to turn out these results because of the incentive structures, because of the profit motive uh, involved. Um, if I was your financial advisor and I said, I'll make more money when your account goes down and I'll make less money when you make more money, you'd tell me to get the hell out of your office. But that's what we're doing with the healthcare system. They make more money by keeping us sick for longer, and they make less money if we get healthy. And that's what we get. We get exactly, that's what economics predicts. Economics predicts that systems tend to output the results which they're incentivized to produce. And that's what our system is incentivized to produce. And that's what it creates.
And where did it all change? Like, have you looked into like historically how medicine became n no longer root extracts and dietary, but now exclusively only something that is written on a prescription pad?
Well, yeah, I mean, some people might have heard of um, when the AMA was created, it shut down a whole bunch of medical hospitals in the USA, and this was meant to be to keep a certain standard up. But obviously,
Flex
over the yeah, the Rockefellers bought into the pharmaceutical industry, and they were also funding the medical education, and so this kind of thing became the all. When I started talking about castor oil, using it to detoxify the liver, people said, "Oh yeah, older people went, oh yeah, my grandmother used castor oil for everything." People used to know about lots of natural remedies, but they were basically taken out of circulation. I'm not going into the history of it a great deal. I have written about it in the past, but I think the thing to realize is when we say prevention is better than cure an awful lot. In mainstream medicine, what they think prevention is screening, right? They think if they give you statins, that's preventative medicine. They don't think if your blood sugar or your uh, your blood pressure or your weight or anything is too high, they want to give you a drug to change it. They don't say you should change your lifestyle to change it. Not very much, a little bit. But in the 1993, and again about 10 years later, the New England Journal of Medicine released a very well-researched report called Actual Causes of Death in the USA, and it stated that 70% of our diseases are lifestyle related, with poor diet and lack of exercise being the main risk factors and then excessive smoking and drinking. Now, I'd say it's 70%. It's probably more like 90%. Um, but it's funny because when people die, they don't get written down lifestyle or the standard American diet. They'll say that the cause of death is something you can charge people to treat. It was the official position of the AMA for decades that there's no link between diet and disease. And people still go take these like, oh, the AMA says this. The AMA said there was no link between diet and disease, right? So what we should be seeking to do, as you said, is to prevent disease where possible and treat it where necessary. And usually what people say is, yeah, but people don't want to change their lifestyle. That might be true in a society where the doctor goes, oh yeah, just eat less calories and take more exercise and fobs you off to do it on your own. And but they've demonstrated different programs that that have demonstrated that you can reduce the risk of heart disease and diabetes. In 1995, Duke University Medical Center instituted a program to prevent congestive heart failure. And nutritionists helped patients improve their diets, and doctors shared information about them and came up with ways to improve care. And the number of hospital admissions for congestive heart failure at Duke declined, and the patients who were admitted spent less time in the hospital, and it brought the costs down for insurers, for private insurance, by 37%. So it demonstrated to be successful. So you'd think that there would be more of these, but they haven't become more prevalent. And the reason why is because Duke lost money running the program, which comes back to my essential point, which is that the incentive structure system uh, of the system is such they profit so much for treating preventable disease that it's not in their interests to prevent disease. And I've got a bunch of these kind of stories, especially for diabetes prevention, um, that I'm putting in the new book because without concrete examples, people just defer to that. Well, people just don't want to change. The thing is, you need to get people socially involved. They need to be doing it together. So when we don't know how to do this yet, but in a system that profited from health rather than sickness, you'd have the best psychologists in the world working to try and understand how to motivate people better. And rather than tell people, go away and eat less donuts, which isn't helpful. They're still going to go back to their family. They're still going to go back to their friends, and their friends are going to take them out drinking because they're drinking buddies. So what's necessary are collaborative social programs where people feel like they're learning with other people, they're making friends, they're improving their social circle, and reducing their risk of heart disease, cancer, stroke, and diabetes all at the same time.
Yeah, I don't buy into people can't change their lifestyles. I do think that humans look for the path of least resistance. People I've been a gym rat most of my life. I've always been an athlete playing sports, and people always come to me and say, "Hey, have you heard of this diet pill where you can lose weight?" It's like
Mhm.
I'm like, "Hey, I know the secret to losing weight. It's diet
Yeah,
and exercise. It's the
right.
same way people have been healthy since the beginning of time. You eat better, you move more, and the rest will fall into place. But everybody's always looking for that shortcut. It's no different than, even in the supplement industry, like, hey, have you heard of this peptide or this supplement that will make you bulk up or whatever. It's like, yeah, it might work, but I'm like, you can also just work out hard and eat right, and you'll get results that way. So I think there is
Yeah,
to people wanting to take shortcuts, but the reason why these type of podcasts I always find to be the most important throughout the whole time I've been doing podcasts. Like we talked about before we started recording, like I've had a lot of doctors on, a lot of people who talk about diet, nutrition, and health. And to me, it's important because like there's somebody out there today who has joint pain and that doesn't know it's from, their dietary intake of things that cause inflammation like glucose and
Right.
people out there who have a lack of energy, who don't realize maybe it's their gut health. Like there's all these
Mhm.
people out there, okay, that or people who are on antidepressants who don't know that exercise and getting sun and all these things can give them better effects and more positive effects than the pill they're on. And and so there's this information can change your life today. It
Right.
help you get the most out of your life. Whatever you enjoy doing, you'll enjoy doing it more when you have more energy and you
Of
feel,
course.
and that's, and the thing is too, is like I remember when I first started podcasting, I would do research before shows and or even after show, whatever. But I'd hear something interesting. I'd do some research after the show or before the show, and I could find a lot of the alternative medicine doctors. A lot of my worldview and my own personal philosophies were rabbit holes that I went down before I ever started podcasting. And
Mhm.
now you give people some information and they want to go search for it themselves. They've blackballed anybody who goes against
Mhm.
the mainstream medicine narratives. And I remember years ago, I think we were talking about this too. Like Dr. Brzezinski was one of the first, big name doctors on my show, and he had a few documentaries by Eric Mercola about the business of cancer and how he was, basically being called a murderer, and the FDA wouldn't approve his treatment, even though it was safer than chemo and radiation. And and I remember when in that documentary, watching it before he came on my show, they talked about all these people online who just basically will put out these articles and say that he's pseudoscience and he kills people and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, that seems crazy that
Yeah,
people.
I wonder who's paying for those articles.
Yeah. Well, what happened was when he came on my show, and this was like, I mean, he was one of my first big guests. So this was in like probably within the first 6 months of doing the show. So it was like either late 2013 to early 2014. I didn't really have a foundation or a following yet. So I assumed that those people, if they were out there, wouldn't care about him appearing on my show. All I did was tweet. I either tweeted it or put on Facebook that, hey, really excited Dr. Brzezinski's coming on the Ripple Effect podcast. And all of a sudden, of course, all these like fake profiles are saying he's a murderer, he's pseudoscience, don't have that guy on, this and that. And I'm like looking at their accounts, I'm like, these aren't real people. I'm like, and they're even trying to, spread these lies to me and my small audience. So like, think about the how far they would go to stop this guy from getting out there. And so this stuff happens. And they're just like you were saying before, everything's about profit and everything's about how do they maximize profit. If you go to a typical doctor nearby and you say, I don't have insurance, and what's the cost of this visit if I don't have insurance, or this surgery or whatever, the cost is like half, if maybe less than that in some cases, like a quarter, because they inflate the prices. The insurance ends up paying those inflated prices, then we get having to pay inflated premiums, and it's this vicious cycle of things.
Right.
Really, like we said before, like the the question shouldn't be how do we make it easier for people to afford this nonsense. The question should be how do we convince people to be proactive, and how do we convince people that think, even like fluoride. Remember years ago, fluoride was kind of laughed at. You bring up fluoride, you're like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Now there's literally cities and towns that are taking it out of their water. It's there's court cases, people getting sued, all this stuff, people getting sick, and it's like now you can talk about fluoride and people don't look at you like you're insane. And so it's like people have to be proactive. Everything you put in your body is either helping or hurting you. I brought out Jim Abrams before about the guy who did the Naked Gun movies, had a child that was having seizures, and I can even find the episode right here, and he started the Charlie Foundation, and this guy was he was looking for a way to resolve his child's seizures, and he did all the mainstream stuff: surgery, prescription drugs, John Hopkins had studies that he found that showed success with dietary treatments with the ketogenic diet, and they completely stopped doing those treatments and stopped looking into that because they wanted to explore pharmaceutical options. So
Mm.
the only reason his doctor didn't know about it or and never suggested to him was because they're just like, hey, this is a dietary option. There's no real money in this. Let's find out how we get the same results but with prescription drugs. And that's kind of the world we live in. I mean, all these
Right.
doctors that I don't know if you followed the story some years ago when all the alternative doctors were having these mysterious deaths and
Mm.
people when you brought that up, people would look at me like, no, they wouldn't take them out. They wouldn't, and I'm like, you know how big of an industry it is?
They're making trillions. It only takes one person without a conscience to hire a hitman. It's like you can believe that out of all of the Arabs in the Middle East, someone is going to commit a terrorist attack. And even if people go, well, most people wouldn't do that, or it only takes so given that there's literally millions of people profiting from this system, and some of them, a lot of them are on six figures, and some of them are making millions or multiple millions. How improbable is it that they wouldn't take out someone that they thought was going to be a serious threat to the business model? I mean, the main thing they do is they just, first of all, they ignore you, if they possibly can, and if they can, then they'll flood Google um, with websites claiming to discredit you. And it's obvious that these are ghostwritten. I mean, look, when you watch the news in America in the evening, almost all the ads are pharma ads. And I naively thought that what they were doing was trying to sell drugs. Now, that might be part of it, but the main thing they're doing is buying favorable coverage because pharma is the biggest advertiser during the news. Now, when I was researching my book, I learned that there's over 500 drug withdrawals a year in the USA, wrong dosage in the bottle, this, that, whatever, something was wrong with the process. If they wanted, they could create a pharma scandal every single day because this happens every day, right? But you hardly see anything. It really needs to hit a critical mass for anything to get into the mainstream media. So they're buying favorable coverage. If you go on Wikipedia, anyone who's in the alternative, recently, some researcher said something that wasn't accepted by the cabal, and they basically took all the citations of all of his published academic work off his Wikipedia article. That makes him look less qualified. Every time a naturopath um, is successful at anything, if you go on their Wikipedia page, um, they'll find an incident of when they kicked their neighbor's dog or something like that and dedicate the whole article to make them look bad. And even if they've got academic publications and stuff like that, they'll either play it down or admit or omit it and just not report it on the Wikipedia page. Whereas on the other hand, if a drug company gets sued for scientific fraud on a drug, if you go to the Wikipedia article for that drug, it will just have one or two lines dedicated to it, if anything. And so I mean, if they'd buy over the news, why wouldn't they buy over Wikipedia? They know that the first thing that someone's going to do when they hear about something is go and look the person up on Wikipedia. Even someone like me, I'm researching a book and I read on Wikipedia, this guy's a quack. I don't want to cite him in my book because I think I want to be a credible journalist. I don't want people to think I'm just reporting on what quacks say, so it's very effective. And then you have these skeptics like Mike Sharma say, well, there's no evidence for any of this alternative stuff. It's your job to convince the scientific community that your alternative stuff is good. It's like it's not an even playing field, you maniac. Like I don't know how much money the Skeptics magazine receives from the pharmaceutical industry, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were funding these skeptic groups and these. I wanted to debate one of these mainstream skeptics on his show on oncology and just come up with citation after citation from mainstream medical journals admitting that their treatments, which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes of taxpayers' money, are not effective. He won't have me on the show. He ignores me. Like, what are you going to do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they don't want to debate you because you'll expose them for what they are. And you know, that's the thing. Like even hospitals are it's all for profit. I mean, when COVID happened, I would tell people over and over again, I'm like, if you own a hotel, isn't it in your interest to have every one of those beds filled? Because that's how you make money. I'm like, you want to work at 70, the closest to 100% capacity as possible. I'm like, hospitals are no different. They try to keep people there a little longer. So when people would be like, oh, the hospital's filling, it's filled, it's at 80% capacity. I'm like, they're designed to do that. The system is designed to keep people there longer than they have to be. I mean, there's so many stories of people who talk about like, hey, they were trying to keep me an extra day, they're trying to keep me an extra week. They kept me there. They just did test after test after
Yeah,
test. They're not doing tests because they're trying to figure out what's wrong with you. They're doing
no.
tests because they can keep charging your insurance.
That's right. And I've got a whole article on unnecessary testing. I called it testing the limits because I like to be witty like that. And there, even according to official sources, 200 to 800 billion dollars, according to one 200, according to another 800. These are mainstream sources on unnecessary tests, and that's by their own standards and their own admissions, right? So sometimes they just they make so much money from tests, and a lot of these tests are not harmless either. You're getting exposed to radiation, and also if you get a false positive, you could be getting surgery or something like that, even though you don't need it. A lot of the thing, even if they do turn up something, it's a question whether their treatments can actually extend your life or improve your quality of life. And then there's things like prostate cancer, which the vast majority of cancers are found in dead people. People can live 10 or 15, 20, who knows how many years without these cancers causing any health complaint whatsoever. So it's like it's very interesting how the testing is, yeah, it's just a major cash cow. It's just milking private insurance, the government, and the taxpayer for every penny that they can get.
Yeah, and like you said before, some of the like the testing for a certain gene because it means that you could have this, like it's
It's nonsense.
I question how much of the hereditary issues are hereditary and how much of them are
Yeah.
environmental or
Yeah,
um like
you inherit the cellular condition of your parents, right? So if your parents are toxic and malnourished, you're coming out the womb toxic and malnourished.
yeah, but
Go on.
it also doesn't it also means that you could reverse some of that stuff if you had better lifestyle choices. But what ends up happening is I think in many cases that the hereditary issues they may or may not get from their parents are inflated by the same crappy lifestyles that led to your parents having those issues. So, like, for example, if you see fat parents, typically you see fat kids. If you see athletic parents, typically you see athletic kids. And the reason why that is, in most cases, is because the kids inherit their lifestyle, the way they eat, how active they are or are not. Like they don't know the proper way of eating. They don't know, they don't necessarily maybe want to go exercise if they don't see their parents doing it. Kids don't do what you say, they do what you do. I say that all the time.
That's so
They
true.
they see the way that you live and they'll live a similar lifestyle. I eat the majority of what I eat is meat, and my kids, like I remember when they were little, I try to like push more meat onto their diet. Had a hard time doing it, but so many years of them watching me eat the majority of meat that now they start consuming more meat, and because they just like that's what daddy eats and he's fit, he's in shape, he still plays sports, he's still I coach, my kids. I'm always around, running around, full of energy. So it's like, they're like, okay, well, obviously he's right because he's active, and so that's how you get your kids to have a healthy lifestyle is you doing it yourself, and not to say that like there aren't some hereditary issues that are unavoidable, but I think sometimes too much credit goes to like, hey, it's just in your bloodline. You got no choice. There's nothing you can do about it. And then instead of playing the victim and just thinking like, hey, I'm probably going to have a heart attack, or I'm going to die of this because my father died of it, my grandfather died of it, my great grandfather. Well, it's like, well, what were they all doing? Like maybe there's
Hmm.
something that, maybe they didn't take care of themselves that well. Maybe they smoked. Maybe they drank too much. Maybe maybe they didn't exercise. Maybe they didn't emphasize eating things that could pick and things that could grow and things that they could kill. Maybe they ate too much packaged food. For some people, like I know um friends of my kids where they're always at McDonald's or Burger King, or eating something that's microwaved, and that's the way they eat. They always eat out, or they eat something that can just quickly make, that comes in a box or a package. And for my kids, we don't eat that way. So they've never, I'm not even sure they've ever been to McDonald's. Maybe they went once with like a relative that took the kids out, and I remember them eat. Yeah, I do, because I remember that, like, it was my sister-in-law, and she's like, is it okay that I took the kids to McDonald's? I know you're big into health. I'm like, listen, as long as they're not doing it all the time, I'm not gonna make it a big
Hmm.
deal, but but for me, like the fact that some people live off that food, it comes in boxes. It's heated by teenagers that are working their first job in their life at McDonald's or Burger King or Dunkin' Donuts. Like, they don't know anything about food. They're just putting shit in a heater and they're giving it to you. Like, that stuff came from God knows where, and it has God knows how many different ingredients in there, just to preserve the crappy flavor. And then you get it and you think it's food. And it's like, I had a guest years ago say, like, if there's ingredients on it, you probably shouldn't eat it. And I'm like, you know
Yeah,
what? It sounds extreme at first, but then when you think about it, you're like, you know what? She's right. Like, if
that's
there's
right.
you shouldn't eat it.
If it grows, eat it. If it doesn't grow, don't eat it, as I heard one person put it. It's like, um, that it's the only thing I disagree with is when you refer to this as food. You know, it's like, it's not actually food. And we should talk a little bit about that. Like, what is processed food? It's food minus enzymes. It's because if the enzymes are in it, then it's not alive. I mean, it's got longer shelf life. So they take all the enzymes out of the food, but that was what was in the food deliberately to help your body digest the food. So that's why people are getting all these um, problems with their digestive tract, with their arteries clogging up, and things like that, because your body is just a series of tubes, and you're getting tubes in trouble because the food you're eating isn't living food with enzymes in it, so your body doesn't have what it takes to break down the food, and the food is clogging up your tubes, causing digestion. So it called congestion. So that then maybe you'll get some mucus or something like that, and you'll start trying to cough out the crap. And you think you know better than nature, so you go to get something to stop your symptoms, thinking that the symptom is the disease, when actually the symptom is your body trying to cure you of the disease. And the disease is that you've got a bunch of crap that your body doesn't know how to digest, which it's trying to get out of your nose, out of your backside, out of your urine. And people don't realize that there's a detoxification process which they need to go through. Um, so,
I think
and
fever is
so,
a perfect example of that, right? Like, people, when they have a fever or a child has a fever,
yeah,
first thing they try to do is, we got to lower that temperature. And it's like, that's the body trying to kill the virus, whatever, they're dealing with. That's what it's trying to do. It's trying to heat up.
yeah,
And sometimes, like you said, it's trying to deal with the symptom. You're not getting the root cause. That's one issue. But then the other issue is you're probably stopping your body's natural a method in dealing with that issue. So now you might have that issue linger around even longer, because instead of letting it do what it should be doing, and so it's like, instead of looking at a fever as the issue, it's a symptom of the issue, and it's also a method that your body, it's almost like having food poisoning and then trying to stop yourself from throwing up. It's like,
Right.
no, no, your body's trying to get it out of you. You know, your body says, hey, there's something, some bad bacteria, something that's in your stomach that it doesn't want in there. It's trying to get it out. So, but obviously there's other alternatives too. Charcoal, I'm a big fan of activated charcoal for food poisoning and stomach issues. But but yeah, like it's a symptom caused by something else. But just like you wouldn't stop yourself from throwing up, even though most of us would like to, because throwing up sucks. But you understand like it's a part of the process to get this out, or if you know, not to get this disgusting, but if you have diarrhea or whatever, your body's trying to get it out. We
Right.
accept that it's a part of the process to try to resolve the issue, and yet mainstream medicine, if you use their philosophy, they would give you a pill to get you to stop throwing up, not give you
Mm.
a pill to get to the root cause of the issue. It's, you know, if you really look at it that way, if you compare, you know, their methods of handling people who are sick, I mean, it would be like trying to get somebody who needs to get something out of their system, prevent them from getting it out of their system. It wouldn't make any sense. But that's the way we deal with all issues. You know, you brought up cholesterol a few times. Cholesterol is another myth. Like the majority of people who die of heart attack don't have high cholesterol. So what's causing the heart attack is not the, you know, they
Mm.
put all this attention on cholesterol, and a lot of it was because they're demonizing butter and fats and all this stuff. And then, you know, and I still talk to people who say, "Oh, you need carbs to survive." I'm like, "You don't. You don't need carbs to survive." Similar to you, like I fast. I eat once a day. I've done 24-hour fast. I think the most I've ever done was 48 hours, not because of any specific reason. I probably could go longer. I just you know, decide that I end up eating with the family or whatever. But your body can go long periods of time without eating. Your body can use its stored fat as energy, and it doesn't require eating every 3 hours like we've been told. It doesn't require, you know, there's essential fats or essential amino acids or essential, there's no essential carb. You know, people think like even being a athlete, like, oh, you need carbs, you need carbs. I don't know if that's necessarily true, you know. And I had this Liverpool doctor. He worked for the Liverpool football club, and and you know, he's big into the ketogenic diet and all this stuff. And he's actually Australian, and he's one of those guys that are trying to help athletes with this idea that like maybe you don't need to keep carving up like, you know, like you're doing, and there's other dietary ways that you could be a little healthier. You know, I think there's a gray area with athletes, because I don't know what your opinion is on it, but I've heard some people talk about how like they have a hard time exploding or really having that peak performance if they don't have carbs. But I don't know if it's because your body adapted to it, or if it's essential for, you know, high impact, high performance athletes. So there is some gray area, but that's okay too. Like that's health and nutrition. Not everything is figured out. Not everything
Mm.
works the same for everyone. That's another thing that we haven't talked about. But like with diets, you can meet somebody that like, hey, is on a
Yeah.
vegetarian diet and they're fine. I wouldn't recommend that for the majority of people, but based on your upbringing, based on your family, what part of the world they're from, you know, what you eat and how you process that food might be different.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone to visit the Advanced Gerson Therapy Clinic in Tijuana, Mexico, and they people who go there reverse cancer sometimes with the completely opposite, like juices, vegetable juice, no animal products, coffee enemas, pancreatic enzymes. Now they used to be from an animal source. I don't think they take them there because they can't. Not because the guy's vegan. He's not even a vegetarian. But for some reason, he couldn't get them as safely as he wanted. Then I spoke to another woman, Dr. Linda Isaacs. She's reversing cancer using the Gonzalez protocol, and that's for some people high fat diet, and for some people low diet. And she's got her ways of profiling them according to their body, and they And it seems like it's not one size fits all. For me, m most of the people that I knew that had reversed, I know people who have reversed colitis, which they were told was incurable. It was on not just plant-based diet, mostly fruit and vegetables. Like, so excluding a lot of plants as well. Then I had a friend that came along who almost had her colon out on years and years of eating vegan, and she went on a high-fat diet and reversed it that way. So it seems like it's not one size fits all. There's certain things that I do recommend, which is taking high-quality digestive enzymes, because if you've ever eaten processed food in your life, then there might be residues of that that your body doesn't have what it takes to um, break down. But I'm meaning to speak maybe more about solutions in the future, and you need to really be careful about putting stuff out and solutions because then they start saying that you're practicing medicine without a license. On that point, it's really funny because I had one friend who's fasting people in Costa Rica, and the Maryland Medical Board came after him saying he was practicing medicine without a license. So he said, well, your website says practicing medicine is prescribing, diagnosing, and treating, and treating means with pharmaceutical medicine or surgery. And he says, I'm not doing any of that. And they said, well, people are coming to you and getting better, therefore you're practicing medicine without a license. And he says, I had this moment of clarity afterwards where I realized what I should have said. I should have said, if people are coming to me and getting better, then then I'm definitely not practicing medicine. That's for sure. So yeah, I'm really not, I'm not, it seems to me from what I've seen that it's not as simple as one size fits all. I used to be really into, yeah, anyway, so I'm still expanding my horizons and speaking to different clinicians who are actually reversing disease.
Yeah, Dr. Sebi, whatever his name was.
Maybe.
Yeah, that the Nipsey hustle made popular after everybody started researching what he was doing before
Yeah, then he got killed.
he died. Yeah, that that doctor proved in court that he was curing people. And
Wow,
yeah, I mean he did that's and
that won't be on his Wikipedia page for sure.
yeah, yeah, probably not. But the rapper was so blown away by the fact that this doctor proved in court that he was saving people that he wanted to do a documentary about him, and then of course
Yeah.
he ended up dying. But there are yeah, the Max Gerson
Oh,
theory.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I meant to say I've seen as unbelievable almost so many people reverse disease for periods of on fruit only with maybe some salad, maybe even, and it's not something that happens fast, but over a couple of months in conjunction with fasting, people like it's amazing how many people I've met that have done it. It's it's almost unbelievable.
Well, you look at the carnivore diet. I've had Dr. Sean Baker on, who's kind of the face of the carnivore diet, or one of the face of the carnivore diet. But people like Dr. Jordan Peterson and his daughter, who had tons of autoimmune issues, depression, all types of things, they have no horse in the race. Like, they have no reason to promote one diet over another diet. And they come out and say, like, I started eating, like, started eliminating foods, and eventually they felt their best when they were just eating steak or meat. And I think majority of the time it's just steak. And it was like this process of elimination. And that's the thing. Like, it's not per se that red meat's the cure. It's to say that whatever was
Yeah.
causing the issue is now eliminated.
Right. And we're not dealing with natural bodily systems, right? For most people, there's already organ damage and fundamental damage to the system, which may alter um, what works and what doesn't. For example, you say some people might do very well in vegetarian vegan diet, and some people do. So some people, like some of these people, promoting the whole foods plant-based diet are in their 80s and they're fighting fit. But then if you've got damage and you can't generate cholesterol, endogenously because you got organ damage, then you're going to have to take it from outside of the body. So, it depends. Are you in some way impaired that will, compared to how your body could be, that's going to have a massive impact on how quickly you detoxify and what nutrients you might need to take from outside the environment if you can no longer generate them yourself. Oh, you're still muted, Ricky.
And there are tons of places that are doing these experimental or alternative treatments. Like you said, Max Gerson, there's plenty of people who are still doing his type of therapy and treatment. I haven't looked into Dr. Brzezinski in a long time, but I remember when I had him on, because it wasn't FDA approved, because they wouldn't let him get FDA approved. You could go there if you're terminally ill, and that was the only way you could go there because it was considered experimental because it wasn't FDA approved.
Uh-huh.
And he saved people's lives. And
Amazing.
yeah, and he was getting the people who were literally at the finish line. They were
Yeah.
ill. Mainstream medicine said we can't do anything else for you. If you want to try this experimental thing, go ahead. And many of those people testified in court and were fighting for him because of that. And then I also had he gets talked about on the Rogan podcast from time to time. Ed Clay. He has a hospital called the Chipsa. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a hospital down in Mexico where they do stem cells. They do all types of.
Yeah, yeah. And there's been so much blocking to get stem cells approved in the USA because so many people would lose so much money.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge issue with oops, that's my Pro Tools. That's a huge issue with any treatment, right? It's just the fact that if it works and if it cuts into the pockets, the profits of somebody, some industry that has been created. I mean, we talk about it all the time. If cancer was cured today, which, some people would say there is cures out there, but I'm saying if like the mainstream world said, hey, we have a cure for cancer, you just have to take this pill or change your diet in this way, eat this way, you can cure yourself of cancer.
Yeah, and
Would
if
be
they had retreats, supposing you had to go on a protocol with a very specific diet, and they said it's cheaper to send you on a retreat for 2 months than it is to give you chemo. Chemo can run $250,000. We can send you to Ecuador with other people with your conditions, and for a fraction of the money. Sorry, back over to you.
No, yeah, no, you're right. But yeah, that was the point I was making. I mean, the thing is, so
It
many
would
people would be out of work right now.
exactly,
All those
exactly.
machines, all those things that do the testing, all the people that work in the cancer department of the hospitals would all be unemployed. And once you create an industry, it's no different than like when you have a politician who has to vote to build more tanks, even though they already have enough tanks, because they have in their state they have factories to build parts for those tanks. It's a similar thing. Like once you create that complex, you have to keep it going, even if it doesn't make sense, and they'll go at whatever lengths possible to make sure it continues. So, yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I mean, people have to look at health and medicine and science as a business. I think that's been one of the hardest things for people to really cope with and understand is that they assume that if they're a doctor and who went through all those years of school, which again, all the things that we're learning came from the pharmaceutical industry, anyways,
Yeah.
and then they must have a great moral compass and they must be a great person. But even if they do, they're misled, they're manipulated, and they're fed information that benefits big pharma.
Yeah, and they're part of an institution which is like a ship, and the ship is heading in one direction. And as much as you try to run from the front of the ship to the back of the ship to go the opposite direction of the ship's still moving in that direction. And that's the direction of increasing chronic disease, treating chronic disease over as long a period as possible until, without keeping the patient sick, without letting them die so that you can milk them like a cash cow for as long as possible.
Absolutely.
That's what that's what the system is incentivized to do, and that's what it does do, and that's what it produces. And that's why Dr. Jack, who we mentioned earlier, asked me to teach this course for IPAC, um, which if people are really interested, because he's going to, based on this course, create a policy document for RFK on healthcare reform. So if you'd like to be a part of that, that's one of the things that we're promoting at the moment. Is this that's why he put us in touch. That's why um, we ended up getting the opportunity to do the show. So that will be one thing that I'm linking to in your show notes.
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, let's do that then. Let's let people know uh any upcoming work you have going on, best ways of staying in touch with you. I believe you're on Twitter, and any other websites or social media accounts that you have, and how do people keep up with your work? And then also, like I said, it's make sure to send me any links that you want in the show description and any of these links that you refer to.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, if you're interested in the course, then that's at ipac-edu, and you can go to the I'll link directly to the course itself in the show notes. So if that's something you're interested in. Second thing is, if you want to keep up with my work, go to sevenpharmamist.com and download my free ebook. I'll take that email address and put it on my Substack so that you can keep up to with what's going on. I am available in the regular social media channels. If you are a freedom warrior, if you think that the way that we change the world is by changing ourselves, by becoming the best that we can be, we change the world as an effect of who we are. I offer coaching and counseling psychotherapy for freedom lovers. And if you go to beyourselfandloveit.com, you can sign up for a consultation with me, and I'll work with you to overcome your past wounds and get whatever your goals you're looking at, get your projects out, become, well, learn to be yourself and love it, I guess. There you go. Um, Up at the top, personal and professional development for freedom lovers. I think that's it, except if you want to see me in person, you can come to the Greater Reset run by Derek Bros and John Bush in Morelia, Mexico at the end of January. That's going to be a really fun festival. It's going to be huge attendance from what I'm told, and you can connect with other freedom lovers like me and Ricky, and we'll have a great time.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for coming on. I really appreciate your time. Tons of information. I'm sure many of the listeners are going to get a lot of new info and things that they can implement in their lives today when they listen to the show. And thanks again. And hopefully, I can have you on in the near future on a future Union of the Unwanted, so you can reconnect with Sam again. And I don't know if you know Charlie or Midnight Mike, but we can introduce you to all those guys and have you jump on and say hi and join the conversation.
That sounds really exciting. I'd love to do Union of the Unwanted. So I hope to
Well,
speak to you
I'll
again.
keep you in the loop because I think we're gonna do at least one more before the end of the year, and it could be as early as next week on Monday, the 18th December. So if that's the case, I'm in a group text with all the guys. We're still trying to make sure everything works for everybody. I'll be sending out invites, and I'll make sure to include you, and hopefully you
Thanks.
can make it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Speak
Hey,
to you again.
hey, thanks. Hey, take care, and I'm sure we'll talk again.
Okay, great.
Yep, take care.